That's just amazing, just beautiful. I'm drawn to stories where people are pursuing a fresh start. It's a common theme in literature, both classic books and brand new ones. In Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Huck feels constrained by all of the oppressive forces that are conspiring to civilize him. All he wants is the freedom to live life as he chooses, so he sets off down the Mississippi River in search of that. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. That's a more recent novel. It's about a wealthy boy who's orphaned in war-torn Afghanistan. It's all about second chances. It's all about new beginnings. We also see that theme a lot in movies where a character leaves one way of life to begin another. One of my favorites is called Silver Linings Playbook, where a man who has fallen apart and who suffers from bipolar disorder seeks the path to a life of meaning and purpose. So there must be a reason why so many stories are told about new beginnings. Now, sometimes our desire for something new comes out of a traumatic experience. We've lost someone that we love, or we've lost a job, or we've lost some aspect of our identity that's helped define who we are, or maybe it's just the accumulation of everyday stresses and strains. But however that happens, we realize that what we want and what we need is something new, and that we do have a chance to begin again. Now, a common denominator in any of those tales, whether it's in a book or a film or it's our very own story, is that moment when we actually set off on the journey. That first day, when we've decided that stepping out matters more than staying put. It's when we decide that it is worth the risk, whatever uncertainty and hard work might lie ahead. The best known first day of all is in the very first verse of the Bible that Linda read. In the beginning, it says. How often, I wonder, have we heard those words and envisioned that mythic kickoff to everything in existence? I remember watching an animated movie in high school science class, and it was about the Big Bang, that cosmic moment 13.8 billion years ago, when all the matter of the universe came into existence. And I wondered, as I was watching it then, if that was what the Bible was attempting to put into words. The first day of everything that's ever been and ever will be, including time itself and all the physical pieces that make up everything, including you and me. According to the Big Bang Theory, the universe will keep on expanding. Time will march along quite happily, with us or without us. The question is, what do we do in this very, very thin sliver of time that we have available to us? What meaning do we give to that time? Can we be the authors of that meaning? Can we create our own story, or even recreate a good story out of something bad? In the book of Genesis, day one was a creation of God, and it was a gift, but so was every subsequent day. Every day was a day of firsts, and every day was good. Now, to round out the story, God takes a day off after those 6 days of good work. So, because that happens, we can often read that to mean the story of creation ended after a week. Our work's done here, except it wasn't done. We all know that time marches on. And that means Genesis 1 is not just an attempt to tell a tale about something way back when that happened and then it was all over. That's an origin story, not a creation story. Origins tell us where we came from. They explain the why of things, such as, why do I have a goofy Texas accent? And why do I love cheese enchiladas so much? Because I was raised in Texas, where things are definitely goofy, but the food tastes great. That's an origin story, happened once upon a time. The creation is not something that came to a full stop after a week. Creation is ongoing. So it is full of first days and fresh starts and second chances, days and moments when we decide and we act to do something new. I can look back and remember one first day after another in my life, and we all can. My first day of high school, my first day of being a parent. Wow, that was the day I met Ellen. By the way, you might have received an email yesterday saying that we're collecting love stories as a way of celebrating Valentine's Day. Share your story of how you met or fell in love with your special loved one. Include that in the February Footnotes newsletter and then post some out on the bulletin board for people to read. Anyway, no matter how we look at it, life is just chock full of first days. Every day, in fact, is a first day of something. And I think that's good news that we need to hear, especially as an entire new year stares us in the face. Truth is, the change on the calendar is just a way for us to organize things. There's not a lot of difference between December 31st and January 1st as far as things like the sun coming up and all the other normal stuff that happens on a day. The difference is in what we make of the day. I sometimes imagine a new year as a big question mark, and our job is to answer that question. You might remember the movie that came out in 1989 called The Dead Poets Society. It starred Robin Williams, and it's set in 1959 at an elite private boarding school. The student body is made up of teenage young men who, in a few years, were likely to go off to Harvard or Stanford or Yale, and who were expected to eventually become captains of industry and power brokers. Robin Williams plays their idealistic and unorthodox English teacher, and his specialty is poetry. But his big goal is to encourage his students to think differently, to value their individuality, to challenge their understanding that life is just a sequence of predetermined accomplishments and accolades you meet in order to satisfy the expectations of other people. His lesson is that each person has the ability to compose their very own life story, and that story begins now, today, and there's not a moment to lose. And in what I think is the key scene of the film, Robin Williams' character has his students, this young man under his tutelage, study the sepia tone photographs lining this hallway at the school. There are group photos of all the classes of students from the past. Now, the teenage boys in those old photographs from decades gone by look exactly like the young boys that are now gazing at those photos. And he says to the students, they're not that different from you, are they? Same haircuts, full of hormones just like you, invincible just like you. The world is their oyster. They believe they're destined for great things, just like many of you. Their eyes are full of hope, just like you. Did they wait until it was too late to make their lives even one iota of which they were capable? Because you see, these boys in these pictures are now fertilizing daffodils. But if you listen real close, you can hear them whisper their legacy to you. Go on, lean in, listen. Do you hear it? Carpe diem. Seize the day. Make your lives extraordinary. It's both a challenge and a reminder that each day is a day of creation, that each day is a gift not to be squandered. That each day is a brand new beginning, a day when we can compose our own origin, to say this is the day when it's true that who we are is made up of our experiences, lessons learned, both good and bad, and both the good and bad matter. We can't erase the past, our successes or our failures, our moments of bliss or our moments of grief and trauma. Those things are always etched on our hearts. But there's a difference between, on the one hand, knowing where we came from and having a healthy appreciation of what has shaped and what has informed us, And on the other hand, having our feet stuck in the past is as if we had stepped into fresh cement and chose to stay put until it hardened. We're not made to be stuck. We're not physically engineered to be static. We are creatures of creation. So by definition, we are made to change. Every cell in our bodies regenerates, some faster than others, many times during our lifetimes. And I believe that same process of regeneration is also available to us in our hearts, in our minds, in our thinking, and in our feeling, and how we perceive the world, and what we believe about what matters most. Think back to a moment when you realized that you had been truly mistaken, when the person you initially thought was a creep turned into becoming your best friend, when the belief you held on to and assumed was just the way things are turned out to be something you could no longer justify. Those are moments of creation, and those are origins. When a new day, a new awareness dawned for you. To seize the day of a new creation is not to live life willy-nilly with no moral rudder, but it does mean that we recognize that the possibility is always there, right there in front of us to chart a new course. It's to awaken to the truth that none of us are consigned to an existence where life is ever predetermined and there are no options. We always have options. Creation is every day. Now, Jesus told a lot of parables, and if there's one constant in his stories, I think it's the element of surprise. We've heard the parables since we were children, so we have this disadvantage of not being able to hear them as if for the first time. And we don't always appreciate just how much the parables of Jesus really defied conventional wisdom. They're shocking because they blow away expectations of what love is all about. Like creation itself, love is so often thought of as something that can be contained, limited to a moment, or constrained by rules of who's acceptable enough to receive it. So just one example, the prodigal son. In that story, the child who behaves poorly, the boy who disowns and disgraces his father, is lovingly embraced by that father anyway, completely surpassing any previous held beliefs about the limits of love. The child who has stayed at home, the brother, who respected the rules, who lived within the limits, and who's done everything right, he's invited to the welcome home party. But in the way Jesus tells that story, that child, that brother, is left lingering outside the tent where the party's being held. He's there, and by extension, we are still there, deciding whether we'll stick to our convictions or embrace something new, whether we'll forgive or not, whether we'll grow or not, into a new way of understanding the very nature of love, that it has no limits. That parable, and really every parable, is telling us that every day is a new moment of creation that we are invited to participate in. Because every day is an opportunity to learn, to love beyond every expectation. In this moment that we have, this thin sliver of the gift of existence, we're not made to be bystanders just marking time. This new year will be filled with days that are first days, origin days, days of new beginnings, days of creation, days when we can see and grasp and share the unlimited love that is making all things new. Let us seize those days with today. Amen.